When my mom first told me she was seeing someone, I honestly didn't know what to think. I wasn't against the idea. After all, she'd been on her own for years since my dad passed away, but the thought of someone new in her life felt strange. We were a small family, just her and me in our little two-bedroom house in Portland, Oregon. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our Friday night movie marathons. The idea of a new person entering that quiet rhythm felt like someone tossing a pebble into still water. Tiny ripples at first, but you knew they'd grow. It was early spring, one of those unpredictable Oregon days where the sun shone like it was auditioning for summer, but the air still had that crisp winter bite. I was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open, half working on a project for my marketing job, and half watching the rain streaks dry on the window. Mom was making tea, humming under her breath. "I have some news," she said casually, like she was about to tell me she'd switched laundry detergents. "Oh," I replied, closing my laptop halfway. "Is this good news or you're going to roll your eyes news?" "Hopefully good news," she said, her tone warm but a little hesitant. "I've met someone." My eyebrows shot up. "Met someone? Like a person?" She laughed. "Yes, a person. His name is Jack. Jack Carter. He's a teacher at Lincoln High School. We met at the community volunteer garden 2 months ago." I blinked. 2 months ago? You've been holding out on me." She smiled sheepishly. "I wanted to be sure it was something before I told you." I leaned back in my chair, my mind already painting vague pictures of what Jack Carter might be like. Mid-50s probably if he taught high school. Flannel shirts, maybe. The kind of man who read the newspaper with his coffee and still used a wristwatch. I had no clue if I was close. "And what's he like?" I asked. "He's kind. Thoughtful. He loves history and old jazz records. He's also surprisingly good at fixing things. He repaired the garden's greenhouse door when no one else could figure it out." She paused, searching my face. "I'd like you to meet him." There it was. The pebble officially dropped into the water. Jack Carter arrived the following Saturday. Mom had invited him for dinner, and I had spent an embarrassing amount of time debating whether to make lasagna or roast chicken before deciding on lasagna. Something about lasagna felt less formal. When the doorbell rang, Mom hurried over to open it, her face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. I stayed in the kitchen doorway, hands in my pockets as she greeted him. Jack was not what I expected. For starters, he didn't look like he'd stepped out of a 90s teacher catalog. He was tall, easily 6'2", with an easy smile and eyes that crinkled at the corners. His hair was salt and pepper, but the kind that looked like it belonged on purpose. He wore a navy sweater over a white button-down, and his handshake when he greeted me was firm but not overbearing. "So you're Emily," he said warmly. "Your mom has told me a lot about you. I've heard you're the best lasagna chef in Portland." I laughed. "That's a lot of pressure. I hope you like cheese." "Who doesn't?" he replied with a grin. Dinner was surprisingly easy. Conversation flowed without awkward pauses. Jack told stories about his students, like the time one of them accidentally brought a raccoon into the school's science lab. Mom laughed so hard she had to set down her fork. I found myself smiling more than I expected, even joining in with my own stories about my coworkers. It wasn't until after dessert, apple pie, Mom's favorite, that I realized I wasn't feeling the resistance I thought I would. In fact, I liked Jack. He didn't try too hard to impress me. He asked genuine questions, listened when I spoke, and never once made me feel like an outsider in my own home. Over the next few weeks, Jack became a regular part of our weekends. Sometimes he'd join us for brunch at our favorite cafe on Hawthorne Boulevard. Other times he'd bring over small gifts, fresh herbs from his garden, a book he thought I'd like, or even a set of wind chimes he made himself. One Saturday he invited both Mom and me to the school's spring fair. I went mostly out of curiosity, but watching him in his element was eye-opening. Students lit up when they saw him. He greeted them by name, asked about their projects, and seemed genuinely invested in their lives. At one point, a student shyly handed him a drawing, and he accepted it like it was a priceless painting. On the way home, Mom glanced at me from the passenger seat. "So, what do you think of him?" I thought about it for a moment. "He's surprisingly great," I admitted. She smiled, a mix of relief and happiness. But life, as it often does, decided to test things. One rainy afternoon in May, my car broke down on the way to work. I called Mom, but she was out of town for a conference. Without hesitation, she said, "Call Jack. He'll help." I hesitated, but she was right. I didn't have many other options. When I called, Jack answered on the second ring. "Emily? Everything okay?" "My car decided to die on Burnside Street," I said, trying to sound casual. "Mom said you might be able to." "Stay where you are," he said immediately. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. True to his word, he showed up in 9. He had tools in his trunk and managed to get my car started enough to limp it to a repair shop. While we waited for the mechanic, we sat in the shop's tiny waiting area, sipping vending machine coffee. "You know," I said, "you didn't have to drop everything to come help me." He smiled. Family helps family. Something about the way he said it stuck with me. By the time summer rolled around, Jack felt less like my mom's boyfriend, and more like, well, just Jack. The guy who taught me how to change a tire. The one who brought over his famous blueberry pancakes on Sunday mornings. The one who could get Mom to relax after a long day better than anyone else. One evening in late August, we all sat in the backyard, string lights glowing above us, fireflies darting around. Jack pulled out his guitar and started playing softly. Mom leaned against him, and I realized this wasn't just about my mom finding someone. It was about all of us finding a little more joy, a little more connection. When Jack eventually asked Mom to marry him, 6 months later, I didn't feel the panic I thought I might. Instead, I hugged him and said, "Welcome to the family." And I meant it. Because sometimes the thing you're most surprised by isn't the person themselves. It's how easily they can fit into a space in your life you didn't even know was empty.